So we often think about the horror of dying in battle, and potentially dying as an unknown soldier on the battlefield. And that's why some of these men have written their names as they lie wounded on the field on them, so that they would be found and hopefully identified when their bodies are recovered. But that horror of dying on the field is dramatically amplified by the horror of the fires that are spreading through this area. You've got a fear generally of dying anonymously, that again is leading these men to pin their names on to their jackets. But the fires mean not only a horrible death if you're lying on the field wounded, an absolutely unfathomable death, but also a guaranteed anonymous one. That paper means nothing once the fires have swept over you. So not only are they likely to have an unmarked grave, but also likely to have no grave, or a mass grave if their bones are recovered later on. This is not exactly how these men thought they would die. If they thought they were going to die on the battlefield, most of them were hoping for a quick death, not to lie wounded on the field. If they did lie wounded on the field, they hoped that their bodies would be recovered, that perhaps friends would attend to them, maybe they would be recovered back to a field hospital, and then that their grave would be marked so that their families could come to visit it. This is not a soldier's death in battle that these men are confronting as the fires sweep through the woods here. Horace Porter, one of Ulysses S. Grant's aides, speaking rather generally, wrote, "Forest fires raged, ammunition trains exploded, the dead were roasted in the conflagration, the wounded, roused by its hot breath, dragged themselves along with their torn and mangled limbs, in the mad energy of despair, to escape the ravages of the flames, and every bush seemed hung with shreds of blood-stained clothing. It was as though Christian men had turned to fiends, and hell itself had usurped the place of earth." One artilleryman along this line farther to the south, a Union artillerist, said that he saw a man, both of whose legs were broken, lying on the ground with his cocked rifle by his side and his ramrod in his hand, and his eyes set on the front. I knew he meant to kill himself in case of fire, knew it as surely as though I could read his thoughts. So despite the horrors of dying on the battlefield, despite the horrors of the fires moving through this area, it's particularly horrible to face this choice, that this man has clearly already made his decision, that seeing the oncoming flames, knowing that your comrades are far away, and seeing that your choice is only of how to die, that's the only options you have remaining before you. And so some of these men will choose to die on their own terms, rather than suffer the horrible death of being burned on the field. Any soldier has to confront the likelihood, especially in such a horrible battle, that they may well be killed. But it's one thing to be killed bravely charging the works, and another to be wounded and lie and be consumed by a fire. It also doesn't seem to serve their purpose, especially with a lot of these men being volunteers, or even those who are conscripts. They're fighting for a cause. And they hope to, if they do die, that they are dying for that cause. But if they're simply lying wounded on the field and consumed by a fire, it doesn't really seem as though they are dying for a cause. Their deaths seem rather needless and very random. It's a very difficult thing for these men to confront.
One man wrote of fires in this area. Soon the fire communicated to the trees and bush, and in less than an hour, acres of ground over which the armies had struggled and fought during the 2 awful days was a mass of fire. Mind you, these were not tree-topping western forest fires. These were ground-creeping eastern brush fires that we see on the roadside every year as we drive up and down America's highways. Though not spectacular, they were exceedingly deadly.